welcome to another episode of the Usagi Podjimbo podcast. I'm your host, Mike, as always, and we are here to discuss and talk about the Usagi Yojimbo comic book series, and we got a good one for you guys today. If you want to go by issue, we are on Usagi Yojimbo Volume 2, Issue 10, and we are looking at Slavers Part 2, as well as The Nature of the Viper, which is a short story, which I'm excited to get into. But do a little housekeeping beforehand. If you want to help support the podcast, share the podcast with your friends. Talk about it, tell your friends. Give me some feedback. Let me know how I'm doing. I do have a Facebook page, Usagi Podjimbo, an Usagi Yojimbo podcast. You can look me up on Facebook. Almost to 100 members. So cool to see this little podcast that could grow and grow each day. But I want to say thank you to everybody for listening. Share the podcast, rate and review the podcast on whatever podcast platform you choose to. But yeah, let's get into this. And we got a good story for you guys today in Slavers Part 2. If you don't remember what happened, Usagi got mixed up with a little boy named Hiro in the last issue, and Hiro ran away from some slavers who came to his town to basically take it over and take over the harvest. And I can't remember if they wanted to keep it or sell it off for money, but they were using the villagers to basically harvest the crops and stuff. And where we're at in this particular story is Usagi ends up being captured by the slavers, as well as General Fuji, who is the boss of the bad guys. And that's where we're at in this particular issue. This issue starts out with Usagi upside down, and he's bound with rope, and he's actually being dunked in some water, being submerged, drowning to death, basically. And Usagi gets pulled up, because you hear the people in the background say, "Come on, okay, bring him up." And Usagi is coughing and hacking and spitting and choking. And we see Fuji, and Fuji is like, still alive. You're a tough one. All right, Miyamoto Usagi. And Fuji grabs Usagi's ears, and he brings him in close, and he's like, take him down. Maybe a day on the rope will soften him up. And the guy from the last issue, who Usagi ended up tying to a tree, he's like, yeah, General Fuji, we'll definitely do that. And we see outside the farmers working and toiling away, working at something, and Usagi gets brought out very violently. He's still bound, and Fuji says that he will break Usagi's spirit. That is a promise. And they're like, come on, traitor, let's go, And we see them dragging Usagi across the ground. And the villagers are looking, especially the headman, who is Hiro's father. And they're like, hey, headman, no step closer. You're not a part of this. Get back to work. And we see them, and they're like, come on, we got you. We're in a good mood today. We're going to treat you right, Usagi. And we see headman, he's thinking to himself, and he's like, we've really got to help him. He came here to save us, but there's nothing we can do because we're shackled all the time. We're shackled in the morning, shackled at night. There's nothing they can do. But the bad guys, they end up throwing a rope over a house and hoisting Usagi up to hang him. Now, it's not like a lynching. He's just hanging there dangling. So luckily he's not being actually hung. He's just hanging around, I guess you could say. But Fuji tells them, tells the people, the crowd watching, the villagers, that this beast came to spy upon us. He is a betrayer, and he will be crucified in the morning. Which I didn't know that Japan had crucifixions. So that's really interesting to think about, because I thought that was more of like a Christianity thing or a Catholicism thing, maybe. I'm getting my religions mixed up, so please don't get offended if I say the wrong thing. And if anyone tries to help him, Fuji says, they too will have the same fate and they will be crucified. And we see Fuji turn and look at Usagi. He's like, what do you say to that, Usagi? And Usagi, with the glare, says, you're a monster. Fuji ends up slapping Usagi. He's like, I swear I'll break you, Ronin. And Fuji says, bring me his swords. And they're like, yes, General, we'll bring him his swords. And Fuji says that, oh, these are fine blades, worthy enough for me. And this is where Usagi gets really mad. He's like, take your hands off my swords. Which, we've seen this before when people have tried to take Usagi's swords. They have not ended well. Or, exactly, when he's actually lost his swords, he's actually gone on the hunt for them. Which I feel like foreshadows in this, after this particular issue. But no spoilers, no spoilers. Oops. But Fuji says, I think I'll keep them, he says. And Usagi proclaims that, you're a monster. When I get free, ow. And Fuji's like, shucks, I never did that, But now Fuji is actually looking to the farmers, and he's like, no, farmers, get back to work. You know what you got to do. And they're looking at him, and Headman is looking at him, and he's like glaring at him and stuff. And he's like, well, Headman Naburo, would you like to join the Ronin? And he kind of puts his head down and sulks, and he just walks away. And Usagi says that you're the real monster. And Fuji's like, yeah, I suppose I am, and these villagers are terrified of me. Even my own men are scared of me. But you, I don't frighten you. Why is that, Ronin? Why do you not fear me, Usagi? And Usagi says, I wouldn't give you the satisfaction. And Fuji says, oh, well, Usagi, you will eventually do that. Because you see, the sun, in a few hours, the sun will burn down on you. Even enjoy it, Usagi. Cherish the heat, because today is the last day you'll feel it. That's a threat for sure. And he walks away laughing, and Usagi keeps calling him a monster. And we see the villagers working around. They're talking about how the Ronin tried to save them. We got to do something. What exactly can we do? And they're not really for sure what exactly they have to do. But they have to do a revolt, is what they say. They're going to revolt. Meanwhile, back, I'm guessing, where Fuji is calling his home or base of operations in the village, he says, keep a careful eye on the slaves. I think they're up to something. And one of the guards is like, yeah, I don't know about that, They don't really stand a chance without the Ronin sword. And Fuji, I kind of like this scene. Fuji grabs the guy, yanks him in close. He's like, don't be a fool. Don't underestimate your opponents. Make sure their chains are extra secure tonight and place a guard on the Ronin. And he kind of throws him away, which shows that, Fuji definitely means business and does not want to take things lightly like he did before when Usagi tried to join their group of slavers. Fuji ends up saying that he is surrounded by idiots and cowards, and if it were up to not for me, the ragtag band of brigands would have been caught and executed long ago. And we go to what I'm guessing is it's the same night. And the guard assigned to Usagi is like, well, what a waste of time. What's going on? As Usagi's hanging there, still scowling, and he's very mad. And he's kind of like, I see something. I think I see something, Usagi says. We see this little person in the background. I wonder who that could be. And Usagi was right. He did see somebody sneaking around over there in the direction. He's like, I'll have to distract the guard, Usagi said. And he's like, water, I need water, Usagi says. And the guard's like, I'm not going to give you any water. I'm not going to do that. Why would I give you water? You're just a big old traitor. And as the guard is being distracted, he actually gets a bonk on the head. And, which is, it's kind of funny to see. Very cartoonish, I would say. And Usagi is shocked to see Hiro, because he thought Hiro was dead. Hiro says that he's alive enough, and he's trying to get the knots taken out, but the knots are too tight. Usagi tells Hiro to use his sword, and I like the scene. I like the scene because I like Usagi's reaction to Hiro swinging around his sword, because he almost cuts Usagi's ears off, and Usagi's like, ah! He very much has like a Looney Tune look on his face where his eyes are bugged out, and he's like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening. Very, I would say, reminiscent of like Bugs Bunny, when Bugs Bunny, but his eyes go really big. And he's like, hey, watch it, don't cut my ears. But he cuts the rope, and he's like, grab his water and snack food. He tells Hiro to grab the water and snack food from the guard, and we have to find a place to hide. But later on, Usagi starts to get the circulation back into his arms, and he's like, now, how did you actually get away, Hiro? And Hiro says that he actually, ran to the nearest town, or tried to get to the nearest town, but the archer who from the previous issue was hot on his tail. He ended up falling off on a waterfall and getting hit, knocked out on a ledge. Luckily, it was too dark out there and too much fog, so they didn't actually find Hiro, which is probably a good thing, because if they found Hiro, I think they really, really would kill Hiro in an instant. They wouldn't hesitate to kill Hiro. In which, I guess, in defense of the archer, is why he said that Hiro was dead, because he couldn't find his body. So we can see why everybody thought Hiro was dead. After Hiro woke up, he said that he woke up and he had to return to warn you. And, he wanted to help Usagi. And Usagi says you shouldn't have done that. You should have continued and summoned the proper authorities. But he gives him a little wink and is like, but I'm glad you're actually okay. And he's like, first we need to actually rescue your father and the other villagers. And I love this series of events where Usagi and Hiro are basically sneaking around. Usagi is using his stealth moves. He has definitely practiced his stealth training, I would say, because he takes these guys out in really cool fashion. I like seeing Usagi use his different skills, and, not just charging in there, but, he's biding his time, waiting for the particular moment to strike, and he kills these guys, and they end up getting into the slave quarters. Hiro gets reunited with his father. They are so happy that Hiro is not dead, which I guess we're all glad Hiro is not dead, because, if anything happened to a little kid, I feel like in Usagi it would be the worst thing ever, I would say, And then Usagi ends up telling them to be quiet. Shh, we have no time to waste. And we're locked in, we can't get out. And Usagi, which I think this is very clever and crafty, he pops this piece out of the hilt of the sword that he got from the guard. Because if you remember, Usagi doesn't have his actual swords. And he's like, I feel like the locks are very simple. I should be able to pick the locks with ease. And I just like that little detail that Stan Sakai put in there. Usagi is definitely using his brains in this particular situation. Meanwhile, General Fuji is sleeping with the other slavers, and he wakes up and he finds out that there's smoke, and then he wakes everybody up. He's like, get out, the place is burning, get outside. They're all running. And what I like the scene where they're all running out and they end up getting beat. The bad guys end up getting beat with farming tools, and they're very unaware, very discombobulated. Discombobulated? No, not discombobulated. I don't know what word I was actually going for there, but they're uncoordinated. I don't know what you would say. Unaware. I don't know. They're like, oh, it's a trap, And Usagi is standing in between them as everybody is fighting. He's like, Fuji, order your men to walk out without their swords. We'll hold you all here for the authorities. And they're keeping the fire going. They actually have a fire next to the house. And they're like pushing the smoke in to make them think that it's actually on fire when it's actually not. Very, very clever, I have to say. Fuji's henchmen are telling him that the villagers are free, and he is very surprised. He's like, so, a worm strives to become a serpent, huh? And all these guys are freaking out, except for Fuji and, the archer. Everybody else is not cut out for this lifestyle. This lifestyle, I feel like. And they're like, oh, what are we going to do, Commander? What are we going to do? And he's like, you're cowards. Free or not, they are still farmers. Grab your swords, we will slay them all. And be content with what we get with the harvest, he says. And he says that he actually should have killed Usagi when he had the chance, but I trusted my heart and I thought he was good. Turns out he should not have trusted his heart. No trusting of the heart. And the villagers actually get ready and overpower the brigands in a really cool fight to see. And the archer says, the gate, we have to fight our way through to the gate. It's our only chance to survive. And I love this scene where Usagi goes to dodge these arrows and whatnot. And the archer's like, you're dead, Ronin. And I like seeing Usagi go and use his skills to cut the arrows before they get to him. And he ends up taking out the archer, and they end up actually having the brigands surrounded, and they're like, please, don't hurt us, we surrender. And Usagi's like, where's Fuji? Where is he? And the head man, Noburo, he says, find the general, bring him to me, let's get him. They all rally to go find him. And they're like, we searched the entire village, and the general is nowhere to be found. And Usagi says he must have escaped during the melee. And Usagi says that I'm going after him. And one of the villagers is like, now, samurai, but you need rest at this moment, to heal. And Usagi says he still has my swords. And that is where this issue ends, moving on into the rest of this story, which is going to be very interesting, I have to say. But I have to say, I really like this slaver story, especially when it kind of pulled the rug out from under me when I was reading it. I like the fact that, normally we get a story and the story gets resolved, I would say. At least 1, 2, or 3 stories, usually 1 to 2 when it's a two-parter, but to see it continue on and build upon what we've already established, and seeing how now Usagi is going to have to go on a journey to find the guy who took his swords, which are the soul of the samurai, if you don't remember exactly. But yeah, it's this slaver story is really, really good, and it definitely makes you look at Usagi a little differently, I would say, because Usagi is very much a jack of all trades. He can fight duels, kill people silently, lockpick. He's a master of unlocking. Luckily, he's not a Jill sandwich, if you get that reference. But yeah, I love seeing my heroes overcome adversity. I feel like Usagi definitely overcome things in this story, and I feel like we're leading into a big, I don't want to say revenge story, but Usagi's getting revenge for what happened to him and his swords and the villagers, I would say. Because I guess, you could say it's a really personable story for Usagi now, because you took his swords. You shouldn't mess with another man's swords. Just saying, But moving on, we're going to be looking at Nature of the Viper, which I had a couple questions about Nature of the Viper, because when looking it up and doing a little bit of research on it, in the Usagi Yojimbo Saga book 1, Nature of the Viper is in reading order. It's before the slaver story, but in the trade paperback it was originally published in, it is at the very end of the, is it the Daisho trade paperback? I believe. Please don't shoot me or crucify me if I'm getting this wrong. But in the original publication of the single issues, this comes after Slavers number 2. So that's why I'm covering it here, because I really want to go off of the publishing order of the original single issues. So, well, give or take, because I know I was kind of like not on some of them. But I want to get into this one, and we'll talk about it in a few seconds. So our story starts out with the nature of the Viper 1 year ago. So we are going back in time, time travel, you know. And it starts out with a fisherman, and he's singing a really funny song. He's like, "Oh, I was taking a bath when my wife walked in and he threw a dozen eels right at me. I had boiled eels tonight." And he's like, "Oh, I was taking a nap, and my wife walked in and she slipped a dozen crabs under my sheets. I had fried crab that night." And then he's like, "Oh, I was eating lunch and my wife walked in and she dropped a dozen bees into my rice. I have a new wife," is what he says, which I think is hysterical. Excuse me for my bad singing, I guess. I was trying to carry a tune. But he sees something in the water. He's like, "Oh, what's that? What is that thing?" He's looking very hard at it. And he happens to see this thing, and it's a body. He's like, "Well, it's another body." And he kind of goes towards it, and he gets in like a shallow part of the river, and the body is actually on the side of the shore, kind of in the river, kind of not in the river. And he's like, "Oh, he's not breathing. I guess I'd better report the corpse to the..." And he gets shocked, and he sees the hand of the corpse, the supposed corpse, grabs him, and he, like, you find out who it is, and it's Jay. We haven't seen Jay in, well, a year ago, since Usagi beat him and threw him over a cliff into the water. So I guess this is where Jay ended up, to say the least. And the fisherman, he's like, "Oh, no." He's like, "Oh, whew, you scared me there for a minute, sir. I thought you were dead for a moment. Sir." And Jay kind of passes out, and he's like, the fisherman says, "You frightened me, sir, but I can't leave you here to die. I better get you home." And the fisherman ends up putting Jay into his fishing boat. And the fisherman is actually rowing his boat, talking to an unconscious Jay. And he says, "It's a pity that I live so far away from town. In your condition, I can't leave you alone to summon a doctor. But don't worry, I'll do all I can to heal you, sir." And you hear the fisherman say, "Bruh, it's cold all of a sudden." And we get back to the fisherman's house. We see Jay sleeping, and his sleeping turns to anger as he suddenly pops up, and he's like, "Where am I? What's going on here?" And you see the fisherman, he's like, "Oh, you're awake, are you, sir? I was wondering and worried. You haven't stirred once since you were found a week ago." So Jay has been out and unconscious for about a week. And the fisherman says that, "You had a really nasty wound on your side. But I'm just a poor fisherman. I really don't know what I'm doing, but I actually nursed you back to health." And Jay's kind of like clutching his side/chest almost. And he said, it's my time of death has not arrived. There is a Ronin that I must find, and my mission must be completed." And the fisherman is actually pouring in like food for Jay. I want to say it's probably like rice or something like that. He's like, but it was lucky that I did find you, and if it was any longer or something like that, you would have been dead. And Jay's like, "Luck had nothing to do with it. It was the will of the gods." And the fisherman's like, "The gods? Wow, yeah, are you sure? What about your eyes, sir? Did you injure them? Injure your voice? What's going on with that?" And we find this one thing out that I think is kind of interesting. Apparently, Jay's eyes merely reflect one whose soul has been touched by the gods. And the fisherman's like, well, yeah, you're welcome to stay here and whatnot if you like. But I've got to go fish because I'm a fisherman by trade. And, and we see him, he has like a worried look on his face, the fisherman does. He's like, yeah, he sounds like a lunatic for sure. And we see Jay, he's crisscross applesauce, eating his food, and he's like, I'm called Jay. And we get a little book, a little thing down below. It says, read Usagi Yojimbo, book 6. And the fisherman's like, oh, of course, Jason, but I'm already late, and I have to go fish. I'm late, I gotta go, which I still think it's a funny thing. Like, they call him Jason, referring to Jason. I just think that's really funny how, like, Stan Sakai, like, I don't know if he willingly did it or knowingly called Jay instead for Jason, I wonder if he made that joke on purpose or if that was like a very happy coincidence, I would say. And Jay is still sitting there. He's like, let me tell you a tale, fisherman. And the fisherman's like, oh, a story. Well, there's nothing I would rather do, but, I gotta go fish. Because the fisherman's got one thing on his mind, and that's getting away from Jay so he can go catch some tasty fish. Now, this is a really interesting scene where Jay puts down his food bowl, and he's like, a cold winter's day, an impoverished peasant such as yourself found a serpent almost frozen on a mountain path. Taking pity on the thing, he wrapped it in his tattered coat and carefully carried it into his house. As Jay slowly gets up and he starts to walk to the fisherman, he warmed it in front of his fire, and he fed it. What poor fear he could fairy could provide, and gradually grew in strength, he says, until finally the snake was restored to his full health. And you see Jay continuously walking up to this man with his face. He looks very mean. Just gonna say that. Very scary, I would say. And then the serpent turned on him, driving its deadly poison deep into his body. Why? Asked the peasant. In disbelief, I saved you. Gave you the best I had. Is this how you show your gratitude? Jay moves closer to the panel. Closer. Why does it surprise you? Replied the viper. It is me. It is my nature, he says. You know what I was when you rescued me. And Jay has this very sinister look on his face. And the fisherman says, an interesting tale you tell me, but why tell it to me, sir? And he's like, sir, no, stay back, please, no, stay back. And our story ends with possibly the fisherman dying and Jay just walking away from the fisherman's house. This story definitely did not end on a happy ending. I have to say that for sure. But I really did like this short story. It was creepy and unsettling, especially when you know the history with Jay and Usagi and how Jay is. He's an emissary of the gods. He's very cruel, a cruel man. And this one was really surprising. I really wasn't expecting to see Jay so soon. And going back, I had to go back and look at the last time we saw Jay, which was in the Circles storyline. And I was like, wait a minute, are we going all the way back to Circles? And it's been a year since Circles happened, which I was kind of astonished to see, and whatnot. But it's cool to see Jay back I don't know what Jay's real motives is other than he's still on the hunt for Usagi, trying to kill Usagi, which I hope we see that meeting soon because whenever Jay and Usagi get together, like it's always like a crazy time. I feel like Jay is definitely one of Usagi's big bads, and he's definitely earned the title of a big bad in the Usagi Yojimbo world, for sure. I would say even over like Lord Hikiji and stuff like that. Like Jay is like almost like the big bad. Like he is Usagi Yojimbo. He's Miyamoto Usagi's equal, I would say, in every way. He's like almost like the opposite of Usagi, I would say. You know, and whatnot. But yeah, this story gave me chills because I was like, oh man, something's bad's about to happen. Like for sure, something bad is about to happen, and yeah, it did. But we will continue on reading the Usagi Yojimbo. Thanks for listening to these two stories and giving my personal opinions on them, and we will be moving on from here. Will Usagi find his swords? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening to the podcast, making the podcast what it is, a little Usagi Yojimbo podcast that could. And I just want to say thank you. It's been a fun year to record Usagi Podjimbo. I don't know for sure if this will be my last episode for the year 2023. Who knows? We'll have to see how my recording schedule lines up. I might be able to squeak out another episode. We'll have to see. The holidays are coming, so I don't know if I really will. But I just want to say thank you. Hope you guys continue on this journey with me, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you for listening. Make sure to go read some Usagi Yojimbo.